Hey guys, Justin here with J Hart Modelworks coming to you with a bench update. So by now, both of the unboxing videos have come out for the two projects that I have on my bench. We have the Revell 1970 Pontiac Firebird. That is the Pops build that I'm building for my neighbor Steve next door. And we have the Monogram 1969 Dodge Super Bee, which we are doing as a memorial for Mitchell at Insomnia Hobbies. I've been kind of on the fence as to how I want to do updates on this. At one point, I was thinking about doing an update on the Pontiac on 1 week and then the Super Bee on the next and going back and forth. But I think what I'm just going to do is just do a series of bench updates until I finish these two projects up. And so you'll just see whatever I have on whatever I've actually worked on. So we're just going to update both projects at once. So let's go ahead and roll the intro, and while you're watching that, I'm going to flip the camera around and we'll get started. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the Pontiac Firebird for Pops. As you can see, we've got her in paint. She is ready for clear. So we started by getting the front and the rear clips in, which these were a lot of work. The rear end actually was not that bad. The rear end was pretty simple. I got it in and I was able to glue in the back end. I then filled the seams and smoothed that all out. But something I did spend quite a bit of time on is this rear spoiler. I really did not like the way the rear spoiler looked when it was sitting on the body. It stuck out too much. It really did not look right to me. So after gluing the top of the spoiler onto the back of the car, I came in with a hobby knife and I just trimmed it down on both sides, and then came back in with a file and some sanding sticks and reprofiled everything on this rear spoiler to give it a much cleaner look. I've got it so that it ends right on that panel line instead of sticking way past it and sticking out past the body. So I think it looks a lot better like that. The front end was a lot of work because the front end doesn't really want to line up with the actual body. You've got to do some sanding and reprofiling to get that to fit. The sides do not line up at all. So once I got it glued in with some Tamiya Extra Thin and got everything where I want it, I had to go in and sand the crap out of these sides to get these flush. Then I had to go back in and mask this panel line off and rescribe that panel line back in because we lost that panel line, and that's an actual panel line for the car. Now there is a panel line down here on this lower valance where that piece comes on the side. I have smoothed it out but not gotten rid of it like I was originally thinking about doing, because that is a natural line for the car, so you want to actually keep that. We stuffed some just some blue tack is down in there after we did the primer. Another thing that you really have to look into is this front hood does not line up correctly with the front of the body without doing a lot of work to it. I believe it's this side that comes forward too much. Instead of it angling back like this, it comes forward, and it does so at such an angle that it pushes the whole like front end back. So you've got to clean that up and reprofile that so that it sits nice and flush. So we also went ahead and rescribed all the panel lines. And I spent a great deal of time in here going around these door handles. Now, I didn't shave them off. I didn't 3D print new ones or anything like that. But I did go in with the needle style scriber and I rescribed around that door handle to get a nice deep groove around it so that, one, I could bare metal foil this a lot better, and two, it would look like a separate door handle. And then I went back in with the Tamiya engraver because it's got this hook style tip to it, and I worked the undersides of that door handle so that it would curve back in under, so you would have the hand grab section. So that was a combination of the Tamiya engraving tool and a small chisel. Let me work that back in. We have shaved off the door locks and drilled those out, as well as the trunk lock. We've drilled that out as well. So we will take care of that with some new locks later. Of course, we got rid of the mold seams, things like that, all the basic prep. A lot of this trim is so shallow it is almost not there. I was able to get some scribing tape in here and just line it up along the lines and then go back in with, again, that needle style scriber to rescribe all this trim back in. It's so non-existent on the doors that I didn't even put the effort into it because I just could not get this trim back in. I just would not have been able to do it without really messing all this up. But I did get both the black trim and the chrome trim line redone here, and we rescribed this back in here. A lot of the rest of the panel lines, we rescribed them, and they look pretty good. They weren't that horrible to begin with. And the doors were okay. I really only had a couple of passes on the doors to get the doors cleaned up. So once we got the body prepped and ready to go, we hit it with 3 coats of Mr. Surfacer 1500 Black. I almost always use black primer, but because of the paint that I'm using, I really had to use a black primer. So after the Mr. Surfacer Black, we came in with some Mr. Crystal Color Sapphire Blue. Now these don't actually come in these bottles. They look more like... All right, so these are the standard type bottles. This is their 112 clear. So this is the kind of bottles that come in, but I put them in these glass bottles and cut them 50-50 with Mr. Leveling Thinner. So this is an interference pearl. With interference pearls, if you were to put these over white or gray or something like that, you're going to get kind of what you see here, only a lot lighter. You'll get a very, very light bluish sheen, depending on when it hits the highlights, but for the most part, it'll be white or it'll be gray. But as soon as you put this on a black base, it turns this incredibly, incredibly rich pearl blue. So I was really happy with that color. My understanding is that Pop's favorite color is blue, so that's why I went with the blue on this. Once we had that done, we did lay down 2 coats of the Mr. Color GX112. This is their UV cut high gloss clear. And again, you cut it 50-50 with Mr. Leveling Thinner to get a nice kind of base. This is not my final clear coat. This was not intended to make this body shiny. This is not a final in any way, but because I wanted to go with the white decals, we went with the white Trans Am logo on the sides, as well as the Trans Am in white on the back. For our hood scoop, we went with the white Ram Air logos. The last couple of... I've used white decals twice, and the first time was on the Chevelle, and I forget what else I used them on, but they have a real bad tendency when you clear coat over them that the color underneath bleeds up through the white decal, and you end up with like baby blue or baby green, and it just looks really, really bad. On the Chevelle, I ended up having to get a second set of decals and laying them on top of the Chevelle and not clear coating them at all. So it was fun trying to line up exactly the decals with the first set. I did not want to have to do that again, and I was suggested by someone that if you put a coat of clear down first, it acts as a barrier between the color coat and the decal. And then if you go over with like your 2K clear later and you're really, really light with it on the first coat, it will keep those decals from turning blue. So that's the hope. We're going to see how that works out. We also have gone ahead and taken care of our bare metal foil here on the handles as well as on the trim. We've got that all taken care of. So this is ready for 2K clear. Now for the hood, I'm not going to use their hood pin decals. I am going to use these ring style 3D printed hood pins. These are my design. I just put them on my Colts 3D store probably last week. There's actually 5 of them. There is the ring and pin. There is the old school cotter pin style, which you can't see here because I used them elsewhere. You'll see the cotter pin style on the Super Bee. You've got just an empty base, so if you wanted to do the hood without the actual hood pin, say you wanted to display the hood off the car, you wouldn't have a hood pin on the hood at that point. So if you were going to do that, there's just the hood pin base, just that mounting base, so that you could just have the base on the hood. And then you've got this ring and pin style, which I've got upside down. So those will look something like that. They'll actually sit, of course, better like that. But those are going to sit, and I think those will look really nice. They're a little lifted, so they look better than a decal. And in my opinion, they look a little bit better than photo etch, just because they do stand up a little bit more. So those, the design files for these are on my Colts 3D page. And then there's 2 more. There's a modern arrow catch style, one with and without the lock. Modern hood pins for modern cars in Europe. Europe requires that your hood pins be flush mounted with the hood, and the arrow catch style lets you do that. So I've got those in there as well. And of course we have our mirrors, which are also in body color. I've done a little bit of 3D printing for this car. Not a lot, not all of it is done. I am going to go ahead and replace out the seats with something like this. So I think those are going to look pretty cool. And that is about where we're at with the Firebird. It is ready for clear coat. All right, moving on, we have the Dodge Super Bee. And guys, holy crap, is this a big, big car. I was not prepared for how big this car is. So this is the project box that I keep all my projects in as I'm building them. This car does not fit in the project box. The only other car that I've had that does not fit in one of these boxes was the Tamiya's Jaguar XJ220. And that car also was a massively large vehicle. So I'm going to start with the hood. Again, with the hood pins, these are the cotter pin style hood pins that I did. And the original design sat just a little bit too tall, so I thinned them back out on just the base and removed a bevel. I had a bevel on the bottom of them, and it made it look like they were floating instead of sitting down on the hood. So I got rid of the bevel. It now comes straight down, and it's thinner. It's about 2/3 of the thickness that it originally was, and those sit really, really nice. We have added in the top of the hood scoop, and we puttied this in with some Tamiya polyester putty because there is a very, very large gap where that seam is, where this glues into place, and I wanted that to look a lot smoother, so I used poly putty and then sanded it smooth. It's similar to like Bondic. So we've got that in. And I just ended up just finishing the hood. I squirreled out one day. I had just originally planned to just put this on and then get this smoothed in and get it sanded back out and flush. And the next thing you know, I had it painted up. Now this is just Mr. Surfacer 1500 black primer. Then we added in our decals in here and our hood pins. Everything sits nice and flush. It is a little snug on the sides, but if you just kind of give it a little press, it snugs down nice and secure. As for the body, we have gone ahead and gotten the front end in because there's a front body color bar that goes between the bumper and the grille. So we got that glued in, and the edges are puttied in and smoothed out. The way I did this, so I took the front grille off the chrome sprue, and I dropped that into place in here. I then came in and mounted that bar into place where it's supposed to go, nice and flush up against there. Glue that in with some Tamiya Extra Thin. which doesn't really affect the chrome. It doesn't stick to the chrome. So once that dried in, and I was just gluing it on basically this underside. So once the underside was glued in and dried in, I popped this back out and then just went in and glued all around it with that Tamiya Extra Thin so it's nice and secure, and got it basically just ready to go. The rear trim on this just popped in pretty much perfectly into place. Dropped in some Tamiya Extra Thin, and I mean, this one gave me no fight at all getting the rear end in. Of course, we redid all the panel lines, rescribed the panel lines. We got rid of the mold seams, and then we did some prep on this. A lot of prep on this. So once we got all the mold seams cleaned up and we got the panel lines rescribed, we came in and we shaved off the kit door handles, and we drilled some holes in there, as well as drilling out the door locks, because of course I will be replacing those with Top Studio rivets, as well as the trunk lock in the back. The plan is that we're going to replace them with these 3D printed Mopar style door handles. So you just go ahead and drop that pin into place, which isn't going to happen for me really easy. Come on. Go in there. There you go. So those will go in and look like that, which is a much, much cleaner look and more realistic look for those door handles. We've also gone in and we've drilled out holes for our mirrors. Now I've seen some guys put the mirrors way up here. My reference photos for online from several of the auctions on one-to-one cars show the mirrors are further back, so that's where I put them, is pretty much right in line with this vent window. Now during the first USAC build, I 3D model. I didn't participate in the build, I just had stuff going on at the time, but I 3D modeled for Chris over at CD Scale Models the actual Mopar style side mirrors. You can see they are very delicate. These will break off pretty easy, but as long as you're not just crazy with them, you can get them installed. There is a hole in the bottom of them that is designed for a 0.5 millimeter metal pin. It goes at an angle and goes right up that arm. So when you drill it, you've got to drill it at an angle going this way into the body so that it lines up. But everything should go in, or no, it's this way. You drill it at an angle that way so that the pin will go down at an angle into the body, and then your mirror will sit nice and flush. These are on my Colts 3D shop as well. You can kind of see under there. I've got it masked off so you can't really see. But the washer fluid reservoir, the kit actually has this just molded straight down, where it goes all the way, just a straight line down to the bottom. And I went back in with a chisel and I chiseled that out so that you get the actual, it's actually a really thin reservoir that just kind of sits on here with a couple of bolts. And I've actually got it thinned down to about the right size. So we've got it masked off. It's black underneath, but we'll come back and repaint that white and get that taken care of. And, you know, we masked this off as well. I thought about cutting this out. It's just going to be such a pain with the way that the fender well sits in here. I just decided to go ahead and mask it off, and we're going to stick with the kit battery in here. Rescribed all the trim lines, which was a lot of work. Bare metal foil is coming a little loose there. There we go. The bare metal foil has been through the ringer a bit, so it's had to be redone a couple of times. This actually has 2 layers of bare metal foil for this vent window because I had to redo it. And I may have to come back in and level this back out, which is going to be fun with that bare metal foil in there. But we may just touch this up a little bit before we clear coat this. So again, Mr. Surfacer 1500 black, 3 coats. We then came in with some House of Colors Galaxy Gray from Scale Finishes. This is probably my favorite candy base. A lot of guys like the really, really bright Orion Silver, or they like the gold, the really, really bright gold. I like this really dark gray because it gives you really, really deep shadows. Yeah, Orion Silver is going to give you some really bright highlights, but the whole car is bright, so it kind of, don't get me wrong, it's a great base as well. But I really prefer this Galaxy Gray. So I had the first 2 coats of Galaxy Gray down. I was loading the airbrush up to get the 3rd coat of Galaxy Gray on. I pushed the cap down on my airbrush, and the cap has a little relief hole in the center. Galaxy Gray paint shot up and splashed all down the passenger side of the car, and it was like thick splashes, drops that ate down into the primer, straight down to the plastic. I had to throw the whole car into some isopropyl alcohol to strip it. Once I got it stripped, which actually only took a few hours to strip it down, but once I got it stripped down, I came back in with a little bit of Mr. Leveling Thinner and just cleaned up the rest of the body. I then sanded everything smooth because there were some spots where it got eaten by the lacquer thinner in the paint. And then I came back in and I puttied up the body a little bit to clean it up and get everything nice and smooth, so you can't really see at all where any of that damage occurred. It's all turned out pretty good. And we then started the paint job over. You know, Mr. Surfacer, 1500 Black, all 3 coats of the Galaxy Gray. We then did 4 coats of some House of Colors Organic Green Candy. This is a beautiful, beautiful green. This is just a gorgeous color. So this is ready for clear coat as well. We didn't do a lot of decals. Oh, and I messed these up. I originally had the side markers in bare metal foil. So I masked them off when they were in primer. So after I got the green down, I removed the masking and put down the bare metal foil in chrome while I was doing the rest of the bare metal foil work. I then came in with the Tamiya acrylic clear orange and clear red. And I did the turn signal markers. And then I filled them with Bondic. And I was really happy with them. They looked really good. And then I went to go do a little bit of research for the stripe, because I did put the Super Bee stripe back here. And I came to the sudden realization these were supposed to be body color. So I had to very, very carefully dig that Bondic out, which worked because I had the bare metal foil under it. If I hadn't, it would have just been stuck. But I managed to pull the Bondic back out, get the bare metal foil off, but then I had black side markers. So I had to mask these off and then try to very carefully color match the side indicators to the point where they would match the body and not be the wrong shade. But I think I got that pretty good. Then I was able to go back in, redo the clear red. I didn't even bother with the Bondic at this point. They looked pretty good to me. And then I put down the black decals, and I think these came out really well, in my opinion. They look to be pretty straight, nice and smooth. They're not wrinkled. They didn't tear. They appear to be pretty even on both sides. They line up off of the side marker. So I am really happy with those because I don't do decals. You guys know I hate decals with an absolute passion. Those are the only ones that we're doing, as well as, well, we got the little Super Bee on the back. Got to have the little Super Bee back there. And this also is ready for clear coat. So that's where we're at with both of the builds. The next steps on these are going to be, again, to get them into clear, of course. And then we're going to start working on, I think, the chassis. I know one of them wants me to start with the interior, and the other one wants me to start with the engine, and I don't think I'm doing either in the correct order, but that's just how I am. So thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I always appreciate you watching the video and checking out what we got on the bench. and I will catch you next week with another update.